Hello, hello. How are you doing today? It is so great to see you all. I want to invite you to come in as we do episode 2 of my 50 state challenge that I am just so excited to share with you on today. So I am coming to you today from a different place because over the last 2 days have been pretty long as far as travel. And so I'm just like, whew, trying to get myself together this morning. But I am really thrilled to talk with you about this challenge. And for those of you who are joining in for the first time, I'll share with you that the 50 state challenge for me started about just over a year ago. And that challenge is about running a half marathon in all 50 states. And that's a big challenge for sure. And one that, at many times I didn't even know if I could do, quite frankly. And when I set this big, bold challenge, I kind of kept it to myself. And I shared it only with my kids to start because I just felt like, oh my goodness, if I start talking about this, then, you know, it could work out that it doesn't happen. And what will I do? I'll be embarrassed or what have you. But as I did start to share it with others, they started to talk about how they were inspired by this goal that I have. And that actually fueled my energy to keep going with it as well. And one of the things I've certainly learned, which is a big lesson in all of this, is just the importance of mindset, which you'll probably hear me talk about in all of these episodes. So last time in episode 1, I talked about, lessons from the first 10 marathons. And at this point, I've done 11. So I got a long way to go here, but I have 2 coming up this weekend. So I'm back on pace again. So definitely with starting this journey, I am not quite where I should be at this point, given that I want to finish them all by the end of 26. So I got quite a few states to go, and that's okay. That is completely okay. It's going to work out just fine. And I am grateful that you are here with me to, in many ways, help me stay accountable also. So I am just excited to share with you along this journey. Just as I run with others in community, I also, see this journey as one of community and support. And having this series where I talk about it is really, thank you so much, Jennifer, for that. Yes. So as I continue with this and continue this series, I really appreciate you traveling along with me. And as I am sharing, I'd love to hear from you in the chat, just as Jennifer just commented. Thank you so much again, Jennifer, for that. In this episode, what I want to share is talking about how do you find joy? How do you find joy in those tough places? And there were certainly times, during races that I had where I had to find some joy because it was really hard to keep going. And, when I think about, one particular race that I had, I had only gotten into it about maybe less than halfway. And not only was I feeling somewhat dehydrated, but also just mentally, it was just tough to keep going. I during the race, I really hadn't been doing my water intake as I should have been. The stations were maybe about a mile or so apart, and I didn't have a hydration system on me at the time. And you know how it is when you feel like you may be starting to get behind, you start to do things that will quote unquote help to speed you up. And so that was one of the things that I thought I was doing, was speeding up by just kind of blowing through that hydration station. And that just ended up making it worse for me physically. And then from a mental standpoint, I hadn't quite trained for this particular race, because the way they had it set up, it was set up on the sidewalk. I usually train on the road, on asphalt. And that actually, really caught me off guard when I got there. And from since then, I always look at what is the course that I'll be running beforehand, because I don't want to get there and see something different than I'm expecting, because that just really jars me mentally and can get me off track in terms of the completion of it. So, in the middle of this race, with all of that in terms of the physical and the mental struggle of it, the thing that came to mind for me with that was just, the joy that I had to find in that moment wasn't about, just waiting until I got to the end to have it, but I also had to find it in those hard times, in that messy middle that we often experience in life. So there could be a long project, that you have at work that you're doing, and you just feel like, how am I ever going to complete this? And you're not seeing the progress in it. It can be hard to just continue going. But when you think about it, that's really when the grit develops. It's going to be in those hard times. And, in this situation, joy is one of my core values. And I just felt like, I have to, find what's good in this, and find something that's going to keep me going for the other 6 to 7 miles that I had to go. One thing that did help with that, so the first lesson is just around, just continuing to go even in that messy middle, and finding, your joy at that point so that you can get to the end. But one of the things that I had to, really reflect on is gratitude. Gratitude, just choosing gratitude in that moment really helped me to continue going towards that finish line. And in choosing gratitude, it was, being grateful that it wasn't raining, because that would have really been miserable. And I've had those experiences where I've had to run in the rain. But choosing gratitude, choosing that gratefulness for it not raining, being grateful that I was going to, I had this beautiful scenery as well. That was part of it. Just even the way that they had laid out the course, even though it was mostly on the sidewalk, there were still some aspects of it that I could be grateful for, in terms of how it was laid out, in some of the scenery as well, especially through the park where it was set up. And so choosing gratitude can often bring us that joy to endure. And when I had another race, after that, one of the things that I did in terms of, incorporating that gratitude to continue going and having joy throughout was to actually count the thank yous. And it was about thanking all of the volunteers who were there. And I did this during my race in Minnesota. And you always hear about Minnesota nice people. And they do have some very nice people there. But when I finished that race over those 13.1 miles, I had thanked 76 people. And that was truly remarkable because at the race that I had beforehand, where it was really tough to get through, there weren't very many volunteers at all, hardly any to speak of. And that was part of what made it hard, even mentally, as I was going through it. But in that next race, I was like, I'm going to be intentional about this gratitude throughout. And that's going to really sustain me in getting through it. And it did. And there were 76 thank yous throughout that race. And so that was just really remarkable. The thing about joy that I think applies to life and our leadership as well, that I'm reminded of with that, is that, joy is really about a perspective and not your circumstances. Also, I'd say it's not about anyone else either. It is actually something that's within. And that's probably why I choose it, because I know that, no one else can choose it for me. And it's a choice that you make almost every day in terms of your perspective, regardless of what else is happening. There's a situation that came up recently with my students in the work that I do. Some of you may know that I do college admissions counseling. And as I'm working with some students, they were just talking about, other kids and what others are doing. And it's always, especially during this time of year, when they're going through the college application process, they're feeling like, oh, everyone else is so much better. And the quote that I share with them, that I'm going to share with you, is one that I hope will resonate. And it is: comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. Truly is. Now, Jennifer, thank you so much for that. Yes, absolutely. Gratitude is, really significant. And, as I come back, to this quote, I'd be curious, if any of you, have had, those moments where, you felt like you're, looking at what others are doing, whether it's at work, whether it's in your community, and that actually taking away from being able to be grateful or even being able to embrace where you are. So I'd love for you to consider that, and share in the comments, your thoughts about that. But in thinking about, just joy, there's just so much that gratitude can do to support you with having joy. It's something certainly that, has saved me in many situations for sure. The other life lesson that I want to share that's, come from that experience is, just about modeling resilience in hard times. And so when you do continue going through those hard parts, you're modeling resilience, whether it's at work, whether it's at home with family. And that in and of itself, can make such a difference in terms of just your own leadership and also how you support others as well. So those were some key lessons around finding joy in those really hard times. Now, one thing too that I didn't mention that I did in that race, which I think speaks to, small wins. One of them was around music, and it was thinking about, the songs that were playing during that time. There was a particular song that I wanted to hear, so I was actually listening to get to that song. It's a song by Future, Like This, that I just really love. I love the beat and everything else about it. But as I was almost, not really necessarily counting, but listening for, that actually helped with having a small win, if you will. It was just a small win. And so if you think about something that you're doing that's, excuse me, just feeling hard to do, then having those small wins can help with the progress that you're making and celebrating that progress as opposed to just waiting only to celebrate at the end. And that was the thing that really came to me as I was reflecting back on the lessons that came from that difficult race that I had. So I'd love to, for those of you who are listening, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Just hearing, what helps you to, push through a tough stretch. I know sometimes it could be on just having a routine. Certainly, there are times when I don't necessarily feel up to the training and the running, but even with having a very late night flight where I arrived, oh my goodness, after midnight last night, and the same thing the night before, because I have a routine of running in the mornings on certain days of the week that helped me with getting up this morning and running. I didn't get to do other things, but I did get to do that because that's so much a part of my routine. And so I'm curious to hear from you. What is it that helps you through those tough stretches? I'd love for you to comment in the chat about that. And even if you're listening in now or listening to the replay, I'd love to hear your comments on that as well. So in closing, I am excited to see you in our next episode. And in this one around finding joy in those difficult times. It's really about, I think the foremost thing is choosing gratitude. Choosing gratitude, recognizing the small wins, and then also finding those places where you can still appreciate to keep going. And next time when we come back together, I have other lessons from doing a back to back race, which is what I'll be doing this upcoming weekend. It's something I have not done before. I've run a marathon before, but I haven't done a long run 2 days in a row. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm sure there will be a lot to share about that once it's all said and done. But I want to invite you, if you or someone or a brand that you know would be interested in aligning with me around inspiring resilience, please let me know. You can reach out to me wherever you're watching this episode. Please send me an email, send me a comment, let me know. If you know of someone who is interested in aligning with me, a brand throughout this series to inspire resilience, wellness, and leadership across the nation. I have about 39 more states to go, and I'm excited for them. And I look forward to seeing you next time.